Yes, thank you for the invitation, the opportunity to speak today. I'll present first, and then Klea will present, and we're going to leave lots of time for questions because we know that there's probably many burning questions already. And then they've asked us to go over a little bit to stagger lunch. So don't panic if you see that we're going a few minutes over. It's on purpose. But my role as a gerontologist, which is someone who studies aging, in case you don't know what gerontology means, is to focus on caregivers. Specifically, my research and training focuses on dementia caregivers, but caregiving is an experience for everyone. There's a lot of similarities, whether you're caring for someone with dementia or cancer or heart failure. And what I'm here to talk about today is how to take care of you as the caregiver. So just a little bit of background of the why I went into this field. By growing up, I had two grandmothers. KK is there with me in my dress and my bad haircut, and Grammy Ree is there with me at the beach. I was very close to both of them. I never had grandfathers. They both passed before I was born. But I realized at a young age that I had an old soul, and I really enjoyed connecting with older adults and learning from them and their stories and their experiences. Just what a wealth of information and wisdom that come from the older adults in our lives. But I never wanted to do anything medical. Most of the people in my family were medical, and I knew early on that was not for me. So I didn't think there would be a career for me in the medical or working with older adults. But when I was in college, I majored in psychology, and I took a neurobiology class, learning about the brain, and it was so fascinating about learning about how our brain develops and what happens when we age, and then learning about dementia. So I took my passion for older adults and my interest in psychology and the brain, and that's how I got to where I am today. I've been a professor of gerontology at the University of Utah since 2013, and I love what I do, and this is one of my favorite parts, is being a community presenter. So we're going to do a quick poll by raise of hand. How many of you have been a caregiver for at least 3 months? Okay, keep them up. Keep them up. How about for a year? How about 3 years? Still hands. 5 years? Oh, there's still hands. So 7 years. Oh, okay. How long have you been a caregiver? 8 years. Yeah, so you can see that caregiving is a journey. There are times in our life where caregiving may be just an acute situation that's short term. But for many of us here, and why we're here, is that we recognize that our caregiving responsibilities are long term and undefined, not knowing where the end is necessarily. And because of that, it takes a village and a care team to help support you and the person that you're caring for along this long journey. Because many of us have enough energy for a sprint and we can do it on our own, but when it's a marathon or a never-ending journey, we need to pace ourselves and have supports along the way. So the one lesson that I like to give my audiences, and this can be your mantra, if you're starting to feel guilty that you're going to get your nails done, taking care of you is not selfish, okay? It is the number one most important thing you can do as a caregiver is to take care of yourself and to make sure that you have good health and you're balanced and good quality of life so that you can provide optimal care to your neighbor or sister or husband or partner or mom. And creating a care team, we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but those people can help you with daily activities. They can help you maintain your own physical and mental health and well-being, provide emotional support, social support, creating community support for you and the person you're caring for. Stress. How many of you have ever felt stress as a caregiver? Right. So stress is a biological phenomenon that is life-saving in many cases. If you are out hiking and there's a bear, you want your body to feel stress and you want that cortisone to be released and have adrenaline and have that flight or fight response to get you out of a stressful situation safely. And we have those moments if someone's in the hospital or other situations that come up. But chronic stress, when your body feels that adrenaline constantly and you're unable to turn it off, can't fall asleep at night, you wake up with it, your shoulders are up to your ears, that is not good for our bodies. That chronic stress leads to anxiety and depression. It leads to us socially isolating ourselves. It can lead to poor coping habits that may lead to obesity, of overeating or overindulging in things. That cortisol actually affects your antibodies, so you're less likely to fight off infection. So when Jerry is talking about don't get sick, I'm sure she had a little stress this week planning for this event. And stress does take has an impact on our immune systems. Research has actually found that your all's thinking skills as caregivers are impacted by being a caregiver. So not only are some of you caring for someone with dementia or memory loss, your own memory may be stressed as well due to the effects of caregiving. You have poor sleep. I mean, that ruins your whole day, right? And so many of your systems can make you more frail. It can create inflammation. So you get the point that chronic stress is not good for you and it's not sustainable. And one of the things we're going to talk about is what happens to you as the caregiver if you end up in the hospital or if you end up sick. What happens to the person you're caring for? So creating your care team, creating those systems, that network that helps sustain you is the most important thing you can do. You should have gotten a copy of this. Either I handed it out to you or at the door. We have extra copies around here. Rosemary Quattrell, many of you might know her from Jewish Family Services. She and I created this caregiver planning guide because people would ask similar questions and didn't have a resource to follow in creating their plans. But this guide and there are other resources online. This is just an example of some planning you can do to prepare for the what if moments. So on one page you can see in there's the what if plan. What if you end up in the hospital? What if you need a procedure or a surgery? What happens even if there's a natural disaster? What happens with X, Y, and Z? I'm sure you can think of all sorts of scenarios. Are you prepared? So for example, if you end up in the hospital, where will your person go? Who's going to watch them? What will they need in terms of medications and medical supplies? What would the caregiver need to know about your husband's routine every day and getting up in the morning and having tea and needing to read the newspaper? And they won't know all that. You have a wealth of information in your brain and you can't just take your brain out and pass it on to the next caregiver. So writing down these things where you can hand this over to a neighbor who's watching your loved one or a family member or a friend, so they have the information they need to provide care. And then also in your guide, there's personalized information about daily routines. Routines are very important to many of us and those that we care for. Their likes and dislikes. They hate tuna fish, but they love egg salad. You may think that's not important, but that is helpful information for the person who is taking over your caregiving duties to know. Maybe they don't like bright lights or they're really sensitive to background music. Who's their doctor? What medications do they take? Which pharmacy do they go to? What insurance do they have? Who are the emergency contacts besides you that this temporary caregiver can reach out to? What activities do they like? Are they going to enjoy playing cards or be mad at you for suggesting it? So you can document those preferences for your loved one to help the person who's taking care of them in your presence have a successful experience. And Klea is going to elaborate more on planning from a legal perspective. For those of you who may be caring for someone who has memory loss or dementia or something called mild cognitive impairment, if you open your phone and take a picture of this QR code, it'll take you to a website. If you're interested in participating in a study, myself and my team, we have an online web-based study that guides people with memory loss and their care partner of their choosing through these conversations about their preferences for future care, for end-of-life care, what are their values, how important is quality of life versus length of life, etc. And I have some flyers as well up here, and you're welcome to talk to me after about this opportunity. And then I'm going to turn it over to Klea, and she is going to talk to you about some of the legal steps you need to take to be prepared.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kara. She sounds like she should have a podcast or a TV show, Dr. Kara, on how to handle these things. Let me see if I can switch my mic on, because I'm a mover. I'm a mover and a shaker, in more than one way. Let's see here. All right, I got lights on. Can you hear me? Can you hear me still? Can you hear me still? No? Okay, it's green. Hello? Hello? No? I might just be hanging out here. I think I'm going to be hanging out. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me back. I love speaking here. How many of you have heard me speak at the Caregiver Conference before? Okay, great. Okay, fabulous. We are going to touch a little bit on what we talked about last year. We really built a campfire around funding and asset situations and things like that. We're going to be expanding that conversation. And I do know that we're going to be really giving you a little bit of a fire hose today, just because we have about a half hour left together. And we could have an entire conference just on these kinds of legal issues that would be super helpful for you. So a lot of my information is going to be on our PowerPoint here in front. So I encourage you to get out your phones and be taking pictures, and that hopefully will spur some questions maybe that you can ask me when we're at the table afterwards. Does that sound fair? Does that sound good? Okay, because I do want to give you an overview for sure. So with that, my why, we have to have pictures of grandparents up here. I moved from Canada to California when I was 12, and so my grandmothers were in Canada, and I loved my grandparents, right? I minored in gerontology, majored in history. And so I adopted my husband's grandparents, right? That's what you do. When you get to expand your family when you get married. These are my husband's grandparents, absolutely just amazing people, but they really taught me some important things about how I practice law and how I help my family members and my clients. And so Grandpa Hall, he actually he helped all of his grandchildren get into homes, whether that be through sweat equity or holding the mortgage or matching a down payment. And he purchased a home for a granddaughter, held the mortgage, she put money in, he put some money in, and he did not put it into his trust. He passed away. This all happened when he was over 90. He passed away, and the house ended up in probate out of state in Alabama during COVID, even though he had a trust. Okay, so a big thing, make sure we're going to be talking about funding today. You've got to make sure your assets are tied to your estate plan so that you can avoid probate. Just because you do the planning doesn't mean that it's going to work. Okay, so that's a really important thing we're going to talk about today. Another important thing is my dear Grandma Phipps. Grandma Phipps was this amazing lady. I was her caregiver. She was in a community, but I was her support. Took her to Walmart, filled her pill bottles, her pill boxes, and visited her very often. She was always put in locations around my home within about a mile, because I was the one that was kind of the family, the family caregiver. And Grandma kept on saying over and over again, I'm fine being in level 1 here, level 1 assisted living, right? But if it goes to level 2, I do not want to be here. I don't want to be here. I'm concerned. I don't think that they're going to do what I want to do. And this went on over and over and over again for about 5 years. Every time I came to visit her, she was like, I'm fine with level 1. I don't want to be here for level 2. I don't want to be here for level 2. And finally, I was like, I'm going to be going to see grandma again. And I know exactly what she's going to talk about. And I was like, what am I going to do? And I had this idea. Let's make a living care plan. And that living care plan is very similar. It has some differences. We're going to go over those differences today. It's very similar to what you have in your hands right now. So there are many other questions that are expanded, and I'll give you a resource on how to access my version of a living care plan that you can use to dovetail with what you have printed up in front of you. But that conversation included some of the things that Dr. Dassel spoke about today, one of which is that grandma was a cowgirl, okay? And she loved, and more than anything, watching ranch TV. This is Big Joe's Polka Show, guys. I know it's a terrible picture because it's actually a screenshot of a video from the 80s, but that was her favorite time of the week, was Thursday evenings, Big Joe's Polka Show on ranch TV. And I found that out when I came over to visit her, and she wouldn't even give me the time of day. And we wrote that into the living care plan, right? Big Joe's Polka Show is her preferred form of entertainment. And guess what? When she had to go up to level 2, she was in a community that did not have the cable that had Big Joe's Polka Show on it. So guess what we had to do? We had the cable. Wired in. Okay, so this really does become an issue. Now, if you look in your document, your Caregiver Planning Guide, this authorization and documentation checklist is in there. And these are some things that we're going to touch on today, but I want to give you some context. Right in the front cover of your Caregiver Planning Guide is how to build a care team. Now, I want you to imagine that this says how to build an angel advocate team, okay? Now, I know that's the name of my law firm, but it's that name for a reason, because you need, as a caregiver and also as an individual, you need to be surrounded with angel advocates, not adversaries. And we have often seen, maybe in your own personal life, but I certainly have stories to tell where individuals that play important roles in the lives of my clients or in the lives of caregivers, they are not supportive, or they're not angels, okay? And I know that you are here just by mere fact that you being here, and you want to be exposed to the resources, you want to get information, you want to get support. You are angels in the lives of those that you're serving and those that you're loving and taking care of. And so I want to empower you, to support you, to be able to bring these resources to your own lives, but then also to the lives of those that you're caring for. These are the individuals that, when it says people that I like, and then it says tasks that would help me, if you have a pen in your bag, which you should, I want you to take down some notes and maybe, put it to the side. If you're like not wanting to commit to the document, you can get another one of these online, and we can get one to you, and you can print it out. I'm going to give you some areas where you're going to want to have an advocate. Okay, now these are areas that you might be the advocate in this area right now, right? We're all I'm pretty high functioning person. I take care of my assets. I take care of my health care. I take care of my my journal writing and my picture organization, and I take care of my my legal issues and things like that. But as my life progresses and goes on, there's going to be a time when I'm going to need support in each one of those areas. And we're going to talk about that and what kind of support we're looking for. All right, so let's start out with your 5 advocates. Now, if you know anything about me or have worked with me, we have dozens more advocates that I can talk about and have resources for. However, we're going to start with these 5 core types of advocates. So we're going to talk about your asset advocate right now. Okay, now this is going to look familiar to our friends who I spoke with last year. We really, really emphasize this. This is one of the most important things that you as caregivers can do for the individual that you love before they lose capacity. We just really want to make sure that that your assets have proper beneficiary designations, or that they are funded to a trust. Okay, so just so that you understand the difference between a will and a trust, we've got jointly owned assets go to the surviving joint owner. Okay. And then next, assets with beneficiary designations go to the beneficiary regardless of your will. Okay, so this is not, even though you write a will, doesn't mean that's where the assets are going to go. Okay, and then we have anything left is your probate estate that passes pursuant to your will if you have one, or state law if you don't. There's always an answer. And assets are not immediately available, and loved ones must go to the probate court to get access. So really, we want to be avoiding probate. It's an extra expense. It's public. Anyone can find out how much assets you have. It's a ripe location for conflict, for people to fight. So another option is to have an asset advocate. Okay, so this is an individual in your life that you trust to be able to manage your assets if you were unable to do so, if you were incapacitated or passed away. Now, that asset advocate would be able to help you get the support you need to be able to put things in place legally. Now, again, this might be you right now, but you want to make sure you name someone to take that position if you become incapacitated or pass away. And especially if this is for an individual that you're caring for before they lose capacity, because if you don't make these choices now, there comes a point where you are unable to make those choices and put this in place, and you are left with state law to decide what your estate is going to look like. Or heaven forbid, you end up in a guardianship or conservatorship. Okay, because if you do not choose the person, then and that person is necessary because you are in a position of vulnerability, then the courts will choose that person for you. Okay, so and that of course is extra cost. It's a process that you go through. Now, these are some things that I recommend when it comes to an asset advocate. The number one thing, please just complete an inventory of your assets. If you can just help your loved ones and your advocate know what you have and where it is and how to be able to access it for your benefit. Okay, if the time comes. And this might be you for your loved one that you're taking care of. Check your deed, beneficiary designations, and also make sure your Social Security payee. We want to make sure, because Social Security does not accept powers of attorney. So even though we do all these beautiful legal documents, they won't accept those. You need to go online and have a payee listed on their website. Okay, so make sure you're doing that. Do not hold joint accounts with anyone but a spouse. And we can, that's a question that I often get. I use a power of attorney, do not do joint accounts. Your exposure and your risk is exposing that account as well. Okay, so if something happens to you, you decide to like run over somebody in a sidewalk, oops, you get sued, it exposes that asset, okay? Sign a power of attorney, will, and trust, okay? So that's, trust actually helps you avoid probate. So we would name your joint beneficiary designations, we name your joint tenancies with right of survivorship, all of those things. If you rename or retitle your assets into the trust, then it avoids probate. It wipes out that bottom, okay? So it's a very nice, efficient way of being able to pass the reins on to the next individual to use them in your behalf or to administer them according to your wishes. All right, don't sell any property or advance an inheritance. Please don't do this, guys, without talking to someone. If you sell property, it can have dire impact on your tax liability now and in the future. There are things that I say, I got a good rule of thumb is just hold on to it until you pass away, because they get what's called a step up in basis. Now, if you need to access that property or the value of that asset for your benefit or for your care, there are options that you can do that are fabulous, but you need to know about them. So please just remember in your head, I'm not going to sell anything unless I talk to a professional. Okay. So even if that's a quick email or whatever, I can connect you with individuals that I work with who actually take care of and help individuals make that transition if they do need to convert an asset into something that they can use. Also advancing inheritances. Oh my goodness, I can't tell you how often I hear about individuals who advance inheritances to their loved ones, to their family members, and then they end up tragically needing to go onto Medicaid and they're disqualified because they made gifts within the last 5 years. Okay, so don't impoverish yourself, or don't have a big, huge, generous heart too soon or too late. You can't be perceived. They will comb through every bank account that you have. And so make sure that you're not, giving away money or things like that without talking with somebody first, okay? Express your values, feelings, and intent. All of these things, when it comes to your estate planning, when it comes to how you want your assets used for the benefit of yourself and others, write down the things that are most important to you. Write down the reasons why. Write down the wishes that you have for the individuals that are using it or receiving it, especially if you have somebody that you're responsible for, like, we're talking about a caregiving scenario and situation. Do you want to make sure that they have a certain type of care that's important to you? Make sure you're verbalizing that. If you have a special needs child or an adult who needs support, or there's certain things that are important to fill out as well. Maybe you have a child who isn't special needs but still has maybe some sensitivities that you need to be aware of, or you would like a trustee to be aware of, that you would know how to handle, but maybe another person wouldn't if you were unable to be in that role. Make sure you memorialize those things. And then I just encourage you to make sure you capture your values and your vision, your wisdom, to be able to pass on that information. All right, let's pop into your 5 advocates again. We're going to hop into health now. Once again, I'm just going to give kind of an overview. A PULSE, this is a provider's order for life-sustaining treatment. This is separate from your advanced healthcare directive, your living will, your HIPAA. Okay, this is something that you are filling out with your medical provider, and it's not something you're going to do with your attorney. Okay, this is something that is just usually done in about the last year of life, typically, or often if you move into a community, they often want you to have one. So that's a little different from your Utah. Here's the Utah Advanced Healthcare Directive. Now, this is a tricky form to fill out. It's a little frustrating for myself and for a lot of the members of the legislative committee for the Utah Bar estate planning section. We have been trying to get this updated and simplified. I have rarely seen one filled out properly. I mean, it's really sad. And I'm sorry to say that, but this is the method by which statutorily you do not have to, you can have this same information shared or communicated and signed through working with an attorney. But this is the method by which you would appoint an individual to make decisions for you if you were unable to make those decisions. All right, so this is an advanced healthcare directive. And then this is an example of what's online. If you look in your conference brochures and you look to Angel Advocates, there's some QR codes in there. And I have what's called Learn Worlds. It's called Angel Advocates Academy, where I have a living care plan. And I have videos with stories and explanations next to them where you can answer the questions, get ideas on why that question is important, and this gives information to your advanced healthcare directive. It informs and educates and empowers your loved ones to be able to know what your wishes would be and to memorialize those wishes. So here we have the introduction, personal preferences, mental health preferences, where I hope to live, hopes for financing my care, consent to experimental trials. There's just a lot of different information. Once you go through it and fill it out, you can actually print that out. Now, choosing a healthcare advocate. So these are what I would recommend. Complete an inventory of your medications and medical providers. Make sure you at least get that information down. Sign your PULSE, HIPAA, living will, advanced directive. And also, just as an aside, I really, really encourage my clients to put a brief message at the top of their living will. The living will is the document that empowers somebody to remove life support, okay, if it's necessary. That is going to be a really horrible day for your loved ones. It's going to be pretty it's going to be a gut check. It's going to be pretty awful. And just having a little note at the top, infusing that document with value and with your personality really can go a long way to relieving that sorrow or that frustration or that wondering if they're doing the right thing. And I've seen really funny things like stay hydrated at the top, stay hydrated, because that was her mantra with like this certain client. Everything, the solution was staying hydrated. And so that's what she wrote at the top. Another client actually wrote, a whole paragraph, and we were all crying at the end, because that was her personality, and it was her final message. But just don't let these legal documents just be legal, okay? Let them be a part of your heart. Let them be a part of who you are. And once again, express your feelings, your values and feelings and intent. And then, of course, use a living care plan and decision-making toolkit to communicate your preferences. And on that QR code in your book, there's in the Living Angel Advocates Academy, there is a healthcare decision-making toolkit as well, which you all have been given one of the exercises from that decision-making toolkit, which we printed up for you to be able to enjoy during lunch if you'd like. If you're sitting with somebody that you have brought because you're caregiving with them and you're having a conversation, it takes literally like 3 or 4 minutes. You answer the questions, your loved one answers the questions, you compare the answers, and you see how close you are. And it just opens up some really great conversations. So that's just a small taste of what the rest of the resources are like, okay? All right, we are at legacy. So these are some beautiful things that some of my clients have put in their documents. This was at the beginning of on a living will. So this was at the top of a living will. So that gives you an example of some of the sensitivity that can go into these documents. Here's some really beautiful words that accompanied a gift. This gentleman was giving several gifts to charities, and for each one of the charities, he wrote the reason why. And so can you imagine how empowering and how beautiful that was for the family as and when the time comes for them to administer his gifts, to understand the story behind why that gift was important to him. And then also all of my clients, I asked them to do 4 statements of love and advice for their beneficiaries to accompany that section of their trust. And so these were some of the, this is some of the information some of the thoughts. My very favorite one comes from a client who said, any money that's left has come at great sacrifice of your mother over 50 years. So spend it wisely. Don't you love that? It was just like this nice little confluence of like, I'm going to send you on a guilt trip, but we love you a lot. Like, it was just really funny. So here's some, and then also, of course, I really, one of my favorite parts of Legacy is we do Generational Stories, a platform that we capture their video. And so all of my clients, we have about 5 to 6 questions they can add to it themselves. But it is such a lovely experience when I'm working with a client family after the client passes away and we're in administration, and I get to say, guess what? I have video. And those videos end up in the memorial and playing in the corner. So that individual's voice is just drawing the grandchildren in instead of the grandchildren on their phones, which I've been to both kinds of memorials. And it's just really lovely to have it be a celebration. So now this next one is potential exploitation. And this is my dear friend, Mr. Smith. No, literally that was his name, Mr. Smith. And I actually took care of his home. I was his homemaker. I cleaned his home while I was in high school. And he was my favorite. This is actually the year after I graduated from high school, I came back to visit him. And his wife took care, I was there while his wife was aging and had dementia and spent so many happy hours in his home, taking care of him and his wife. And when I came back to visit, he had remarried. Yeah. Okay. So to the 40-year-old masseuse, not literally that but you know what I'm talking about, right? Okay. Created a tremendous difficulty among his extended family, of course. And but yet he was just such a love bug. Like, you know what I mean? He had so much love to give. And so I just want to say this is kind of a sensitive thing, but it is so important for me as an attorney to have my clients name a potential exploitation advocate. These are individuals that they give me permission to talk to if I get my spidey senses going off. That I'm like, because people can have capacity, but they can still do things that are not what they would do if they otherwise were in a different situation and such. And I want them to give me permission to have a conversation with somebody, a third party who's not a beneficiary and who's not a family member, right? Who they have known, they trust, who they know will talk turkey to them, they know will slap them around. You know, we all have those friends, right? We have the friends that are like, I know so-and-so, and she will tell me what she thinks. And I appreciate her feedback or his feedback. So I just really encourage you, whether if you're a professional, if you're a caregiver, if you're a loved one, to have your loved one name a potential exploitation advocate. It's called triangulation, and triangulation can be negative and it can be positive. And this is positive triangulation. It's when you bring in an individual into a relationship to return it to homeostasis, right? To relieve anxiety from the system. Okay, so if you can bring in somebody voluntarily that you both know that, hey, if we have a disagreement, we're going to bring in, so-and-so, especially when it comes to removing the driver's license. Nobody who's related or if you've changed their diapers, they should not be telling you not to drive. Like if you taught them how to drive, they should not be telling you not to drive. There's just some kind of visceral reaction to that. And so when we bring in a potential exploitation advocate or a third party, somebody that you trust, that to bring them into the conversation who has nothing to gain. Okay, that's the key. They have nothing to gain. I've seen a lot of really great things come in. And for some of my clients, I'm brought in as the individual because I have relationships with my clients ongoing over the years and I can touch base with them and I'm watching them and we're talking about these things frankly. And I'm giving them warning like, okay, this is on the horizon here, or I'm starting to notice something. But I always ask them to name somebody. So that's something I hope that you will bring in as a part of your care team, okay? And then finally, legal, of course. This is a picture of my mom and dad with me on the day that I graduated from law school. And these individuals, these are my parents, and they're actually, I think they're watching today right now. So hi. They're at home in Colorado. And I think they're watching on Zoom, if I understand right. But they supported me. They believed in me. They believed in my dreams. They believed in what I could do and become. And because of that, in the things that I've learned and the service that I provide to my clients and the things I've learned, I've been able to help them as they've aged. I've done the healthcare decision-making toolkit with them. I've done the living care plan with them. I've been able to connect them with resources that maybe we otherwise wouldn't have known. And so it's been this tremendous opportunity to give back. We're continually aging, right? That's what that pin says, aging, everybody's doing it or something, and so I know that, with my journey, with my mom, it was actually the one who took care of my kids while I was in law school. I went back to law school. That's me taking the bar right there with the welcome home mom sign. So that's the day I came home from the bar. I had a bunch of little kids and she was there for me, but we're moving into a time and season where there'll come a time where I'm going to need to be more and more there for them. And so this is my cute family now. And these are the kids, mostly grown up. But guess what? I know that there's going to be a time when my children are going to be needing to be there for me. And what's interesting in this process of estate planning, of this process of choosing who's going to play what roles, take into account their personalities of the people in your life. Don't try and force somebody into a trustee position if they can't even do their own taxes. Okay? we really, really want to make sure that when you're creating this care plan, these individuals who are going to be caring for you, we want to really make sure that we are accompanying and merging the individuals whose personalities are right for that responsibility. So guess what I did? I had all of my kids take a personality test. It was absolutely fascinating. And in that personality test, I also have different types of advocates. And I did some research in about the different types of personalities and was able to coordinate them so that we have a family that's organized. Not everyone is going to be the caregiver advocate, or not everyone's going to be the health advocate. Not everyone's going to be the legacy advocate or the family togetherness advocate, the one who organizes family reunions as you maybe get to a place where you aren't able to manage that anymore. Not everyone is somebody you should have in charge of your assets. Okay, not everyone is an individual who should maybe be in charge of your health care. Because that takes a very distinctive type of personality. So just looking to the past, looking to the future, we are all in some stage of needing to create our own group of caregivers and